What's up, guys? Welcome to another one of my videos. It's James here. So, in this video, I want to discuss why The Last of Us is my favorite video game of all time. I would say I've been gaming for 16 plus years. 16 years ago, I got my PlayStation 2, and those were really my earliest gaming memories. Sure, I could probably say I've been gaming since I was 4 because I remember playing kid games or child games on the PC when I was like 4. I playing like Tonka or whatever. But my earliest memories was definitely on the PlayStation 2. That like I can vividly remember. So, why after all these years would I consider The Last of Us to be my favorite video game of all time? And The Last of Us, when I call it my favorite video game of all time, I gotta say it's the GOAT of video games for me. It's the Tom Brady of video games for me. And when I hear the word GOAT, I think Tom Brady. But when I think about the word or the terminology GOAT in the context of video games, I think The Last of Us. And I would say that with The Last of Us, the reason it's my favorite video game of all time is that it's one of the few games I would consider to be a masterpiece. And when I call a video game a masterpiece, it's the highest praise I can give a video game. But it also is a game that checks every box for what you would want out of a great video game. The Last of Us has great graphics, it has a great story, it has great gameplay, it has a great atmosphere, and the music is also outstanding. But another big reason why The Last of Us is my favorite video game of all time is because my favorite types of video games are narrative linear experiences, and of course that's what The Last of Us is. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy open world games and I enjoy games that are more gameplay focused like competitive sports games. But for me, what really got me into gaming in the first place was linear single player games that have a focus on narrative. So, in the regards to The Last of Us, it checks that box and really has a leg up on other games I played. But more specifically, why The Last of Us, or another reason why The Last of Us is my favorite video game of all time, is because I would say it's one of the few linear narrative driven experiences that I played that also has great gameplay. And the reason I emphasize this is because I feel like I played a lot of games that are narrative driven that are lacking in gameplay or and maybe even lacking in graphical fidelity. But with The Last of Us, obviously it has great graphics, but the gameplay I think is often underappreciated. And I think it's underappreciated because there's nothing flashy about The Last of Us gameplay. Sure, it's quite violent and quite tense, but it's not. Joel isn't some mercenary superhuman like video game character that you find in a lot of video games. The Last of Us gameplay is very grounded, but the thing about The Last of Us gameplay is that you can feel the sense of desperation when playing the game. No one feels it feels like a fight for survival when you're in the tense combat of The Last of Us, especially when you're in melee combat. And yeah, sure, the gameplay of The Last of Us is not perfect. It definitely could have done some things better. Like in the last video, I said the AI was lacking a little. But it's definitely, I think it's underappreciated, and I think the gameplay of The Last of Us perfectly fits the tone that Naughty Dog was trying to create for the game. And of course, The Last of Us is narrative driven, and the story of The Last of Us is outstanding. And I would actually say that the story is my favorite story in any video game. And I just really care for stories in video games. I think a great story in a video game can add so much value to the overall product. And with the Last of Us story, I wouldn't say there's anything that's original about the story, but I would say that it's executed so well. It's well written. The voice acting performances are are set to a high level, or in the case of Naughty Dog games, I should say that the acting performances, because they use motion capture technology, which captures actors' voices and physical movements in a studio at once. But I would just say that every character, because of the well-written dialogue and great performances, is believable, and it's easy to get attached to the characters in the game. And another reason why the story is executed so well, I feel like it has the perfect pacing. There was never a moment in The Last of Us where I wasn't gripped. I always felt like I was on the edge of my seat. The story was constantly surprising me, and the game was constantly ripping my heart out. I mean, there's moments in The Last of Us that are absolutely gut-wrenching, and the story has a lot of emotional weight to it. But more than just the execution of the story, The Last of Us, I would just say that I talked about this in my previous video, that the plot is simplistic. Like, there's not a million different plot threads going on. And it's not convoluted, it's not confusing, it's just straightforward. You're Joel and you're trying to get Ellie over to the Fireflies, and that's pretty much the premise of the story. I'm sure there's other things going on along the way, but that's pretty much the straightforward focus of the story. And I like that it's easily digestible. You don't have to play other games. Of course, it's the first game of the series, but you don't have to, really research the story. You can easily understand the whole story from start to finish just by playing that one game. You don't have to. Sure, there's outside material like the Last of Us comics there, where you can learn more about Ellie's background and her relationship with her friend Riley there. And of course, there's the Last of Us Left Behind DLC, but you don't even need to consume that to really appreciate this story. And that outside material isn't essential to this story, but it can help you appreciate it further. But what I would say is that I like stories that are easily digestible and not difficult to understand. I just think back to Kingdom Hearts 3 earlier this year. I loved Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. And then, they had so many games in between Kingdom Hearts 2 and 3. And I tried to do my research. I tried to understand that plot going into Kingdom Hearts 3. And by the time Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, there was so many different plot threads going on that I couldn't understand fully what was going on. And when I can't understand what's going on in the story, I get bored and I can't fully appreciate the story. With The Last of Us, I could fully understand it, and I could appreciate the story more. And I don't like stories that are too complicated and hard to grasp your head around. And so I like stories that are easy to understand, and I like stories that have a powerful message and leave an impact. And with the story The Last of Us, there's no doubt that it left an impact. And transitioning over to my next point is, no game I've played has left more of an impact on me. It's just, I've played a lot of games in my life where I cared about the characters, I cared about the story and the world in that game. But this game, you have like visceral feelings for Joel and Ellie by the time you finish the game. And I know this sounds corny, but when I play the game, I truly did care for them, and like you almost forgot at times that Joel and Ellie weren't real people. Like their performances are so believable and their animations are so believable that you almost they seem like real people to you that you know and that you can get attached to. And over the course of the game, seeing Joel meet Ellie in the beginning of the game and not knowing Ellie, and over the course of the game seeing that relationship evolve to really what became a father daughter like relationship it was really beautiful to see. And I would just say like that really resonated with me. Like I I would say that like before I played The Last of Us, I really didn't understand what was special about a father, or just a fatherhood in general, or in the case of The Last of Us, a father and daughter relationship. And this actually, it didn't really occur to me the first time I finished The Last of Us, the sort of impact that the game had, but I further understand how the game impacted me once I played it multiple times and watched a video a few years ago by Grant Vogel, I believe his last name is, where he does this in-depth analysis of how The Last of Us changed his life. And he concluded at the end of his long video that The Last of Us made him want to have a daughter. And I wouldn't say for me that like The Last of Us made me realize I want to be a father. I mean, I'm 24 years old right now, and I maybe I'll be a father one day. I don't know, but I would say with The Last of Us, it made me understand what's special about fatherhood. It made me appreciate the relationship between a father and a daughter, and I would say that that was probably my biggest takeaway from the game. And it really, you can't, that's the impact of that is just profound. And it's, I mean, it's kind of insane that a video game would make me feel that way, but it's just the emotional weight of this game is heavy. I mean, it's really heavy at times. And I know it's not the first emotional experience I've played in a video game, but it's just no game has had more of a like psychological impact on me. It's the game. I think it's even like changed my way of thinking about life, and it's beautiful in that sense. Like when you see The Last of Us, a lot of people think, oh, it's a violent post-apocalyptic game, but that's not doing it justice by describing it that way. It really is one of those games where I can, I can talk about it with so many superlatives, but it's one of those games where I don't think you can fully understand it unless you experience it from start to finish. And I don't mean watch a let's play. I mean play it from start to finish and just try to get lost in that experience. Yeah, like I was saying, this game just left an impact on me where first time playing it through, I was constantly thinking about the story and Joel and Ellie and where their adventure was going. And it just, not every game does that. And no game has done it to the level of The Last of Us. So another reason I would say why The Last of Us is my favorite video game of all time is because I would say that it's like the least video gamey video game that I've ever played. And what I mean by that is it doesn't suffer from the traditional video game downfalls. Like it doesn't have cringy dialogue. It isn't poorly written. It isn't littered with glitches. It doesn't have poor frame rates. But I would also say that just the level of immersion you feel when playing this game is why it doesn't feel like a video game. And maybe it's because of the graphic fidelity, and it's probably also because the environments look so realistic, but they're beautiful environments. And the music, I gotta say, I think the music is maybe the most underappreciated part about The Last of Us. I mean, I believe his name is Gustavo Santaolalla, who conducted the scores of The Last of Us. And it's one of my it's no it probably is my favorite video game soundtrack of all time. The music in this game really heightens the emotional weight that this game already carries, and it's all instrumental based, and the music is just so it's I would say it's like hauntingly beautiful. But yeah, the music is a big reason why this game is so immersive, and it's a big reason why when you play The Last of Us, it doesn't feel like a video game. It feels like an amazing narrative interactive experience. I really hope video games can become these amazing narrative interactive experiences. And I think The Last of Us will leave an impact for years to come on this medium and how you can tell great stories, but also combine it with great gameplay and just believable characters. And I definitely believe that The Last of Us has influenced a few games. The first game that would come to mind for me is God of War. If you guys didn't know, Corey Barlog, actually, he's a big Last of Us fan, and part of the reason why he wanted to have a character to go along with Kratos in God of War is because he was inspired by The Last of Us. And I mean, of course, Kratos and Atreus' dynamic is a little bit different, but I'm glad to see that The Last of Us still has an impact on video games. And I think when you experience games like The Last of Us, you realize the potential of narrative within this medium, and that this can really be a great storytelling medium. And it's not only linear experiences that tell a great narrative. I mean, there's been some open world games recently that have told great narratives, like Red Dead Redemption 2. That narrative in Red Dead Redemption 2 was probably my favorite narrative in any open world game, and it's one of my favorite narratives in any video game, and that's one of the reasons why it's now one of my favorite video games of all time. In conclusion, I would say The Last of Us is like the perfect game for me. It appeals to my taste the most, and I think it's a game that's gonna leave an impact on this industry for years to come, and really push narratives forward within this industry like no other game I've seen. So, without going too far here, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up here, and I want to ask you, where does The Last of Us rank for you guys? Is it your favorite game of all time? Do you think it's overrated? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, I would love if you could leave a like. If you didn't enjoy it, dislike. And maybe if you want to suggest some improvements I can make, you can feel free to leave constructive criticism. That would be great. And I hope you guys have a good day.